Hi Pradeep, welcome to the show.
Hi, Nanda. How are you?
I'm good. How are things there?
Yeah, as usual.
Okay, all of us
Lockdown
are.
and lockdown. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but do you still work? You work out of home, or you physically go to the
Yeah.
place of work?
No, not much. I work out of home, but occasionally I do drop in at work
Uh-huh.
just to make tie up some loose ends, and then I get back here.
Okay. So you are a prolific guy. You got so many talents. So let's narrow it down to kind of three things today. Your executive side of your work, and then we look at the writing side of your work and your music side. Is that okay?
Yeah, fine.
Okay.
That's fine.
And let's jump on straight onto your books that you've written. So I
Yep.
have read The Capillary Effect cover to cover several times because I just love that I've somehow been able to connect to those stories. I think it's because of we probably lived in the same era in Chennai, or our thoughts were alike. I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. We do think a lot similar.
Okay.
We've had a few deep and meaningfuls.
Oh
You
yeah.
know what
Oh
I
yeah.
mean?
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Very spiritual discussions.
Absolutely.
Okay. So, one thing that jumped out of that book is it's right at the beginning. It says it calls for poor judgment to occupy the precarious seat of judgment.
That's right. Yeah.
There are layers and layers and layers of sense in that. Like I mean, it's like an onion. You keep peeling at the bottom. I don't know what is there, but there are so many layers to that, and it seems to apply to a lot of things. Did you really think of
Absolutely.
all this? Did you think of all this when you wrote this, or?
No, actually, I can tell you what triggered the thought behind this book. It was
Ah,
actually a particular incident.
uh-huh,
I've said it in some of the interviews before. I was coming out of a temple,
ah,
and I saw this beggar outside,
right,
and I was thinking to myself, what's wrong with this guy? Can't he, work
ah.
and earn a living? He looks pretty okay to me. I mean, he was healthy enough to work.
All his
So I was
limbs were
thinking,
intact.
huh?
All his limbs were intact and everything.
Everything, yeah. So I was wondering, I mean, like, does he really need to beg? And then suddenly a thought struck me that what he was doing outside the temple is exactly what I just did inside the temple.
Ah,
I was begging to the gods inside the temple, though even I had sound health. I was
right,
begging to the gods inside the temple.
right.
That's when I realized that, okay, not everything is as you see. I mean, life runs in layers, the truth runs in layers.
Ah,
And so that kind of got me thinking. I mean, is it right to be judgmental? Shouldn't we always think a little beyond the frontiers of our mind?
okay,
Scratch a little beyond and see if there's something more to it.
okay.
And that's how I wrote this book. I mean, that's the first story that I wrote, the Better Beggar.
Right.
Better
Yeah,
Beggar.
right.
And somehow, when I started writing, to be very honest, I don't know where the thoughts came from.
Mm,
And I know this sounds a little, what do you call high take or whatever, but actually I felt that I was just a medium. The thoughts, I don't know from which zone it was coming in, but they just kept coming in. I was able to write about 12 short stories at a stretch within a span of around 30, 40 days. I mean, the ideas just kept coming and thoughts just kept coming.
Oh,
And
that's
each of them were actually inspired by something that I have seen or experienced. And then, the embryo that was there. And then, to embellish it and make it more dramatic and more presentable and more interesting, you weave a story around it.
yeah.
That's
You
the way
kind of yeah.
I
You
thought,
kind
yeah.
of flipped up. Yeah. So that's very true, Pradeep, because I've had over these months that I've started doing this podcast, I've had a chance to talk to many people and many musicians, dancers. They all say the same thing. After a while, they kind of feel that they are a spectator to their own, work of art.
Absolutely. And many
Yeah.
a times after I've experiences, not just in writing, I've also experienced as well, composing music on my keyboard. Once I finish the work and then when I look back and did, did I really do that? I mean, you start, I mean, was it that, was it really me? Are these words? I mean, I've never used this word before in my life. How
Yeah,
come
yeah,
that word just came from now? It happens. I don't know. I don't know.
exactly.
It's a zone. It's a zone.
Yeah, I mean, even if you didn't want to give it a metaphysical twist, it's something that your subconscious has heard it somewhere and it's kind of stored away, which you're not aware of.
Probably.
Yeah. So this is another thing that I've kind of noticed. I've seen that most of us have some a mental kind of guru or a mental or a person that you admire in terms of, say, a writer. So really wanted to ask you this question. I've seen shades of O. Henry in most of your stories. Do you read a lot of O. Henry? Have you read of any of
No,
them?
quite frankly, I'm hearing his name for the first time from you.
Okay.
But I wouldn't say I had any guru, but I admired or some of the early books I read were of Sidney Sheldon.
Oh, okay.
Sidney Sheldon, and I loved his style of writing, and which probably subconsciously it might have somewhere crept into my writing as well. Where he makes sure that the end of the paragraph, the end of the chapter, or even the end of the page, sometimes there is something a takeaway, some impact.
Right. So just to give you a little...
I try to, yeah. So
go ahead.
So normally, even the stories I write, I normally the ending is very clear in my mind. Only when the ending is very clear, I start writing from the beginning. So I know what takeaway to give to the reader. So that absolute clarity comes, and only when that comes, I start writing. The whole process of writing, and then I try to make it as interesting, like at the end of the paragraph. Okay, that's it. You give that kind of an anticlimax twist or something like that. I try to not deliberately follow, but I've noticed that it has crept in. So Sidney Sheldon was one of my earliest influences. I wouldn't say guru, but subconsciously, probably his style of writing must have influenced me. Especially the book, The Master of the Game, one of my favorites.
Oh, okay.
Master of the Game, yeah. The
but
other writer whom I hugely admire, but I will not dare to say that I have tried to anyway incorporate a style. I mean, I wouldn't do something stupid like that. Is Khalil Gibran. Gibran or Gibran, I don't know how you. Yeah, I've read his complete works, and he's on a different platform altogether. He's on a different level. You can't write like him. You can't think like him. I mean, he's amazing.
True, very true. Yeah, Gibran, tomato, whatever.
I mean, you can't try to emulate him, but you can try to worship him. I mean, that's probably the best way I can put it.
Okay, so the other thing that struck me was, in all these stories, there seemed to be a conflict or an inner dialogue. So, like, for example, it's always... do these doubts really... Do you have these voices in your head that kind of contradict each other?
Always.
Okay.
It's always there. I mean, the question, why not? That keeps coming in. I keep asking that at almost every... it's like a second nature to me. When there's something, why should it be this way? Why can't it be this way? And then that kind of searching questions, now it's become a part of my nature now, so to speak.
Right. So there were a couple of things that one was, although you kind of say that question the existence of God as we all know it, but while referring to it, you put capitals for them, and the T is capital. So
okay, that's see, actually, when I wrote it, when I wrote this book, Capillary Effect was written around 15 years back, 2003 actually.
Right.
So probably my understanding of God was something different that time. I mean, I used to confuse God with deities and stuff like that.
Right.
And then, so probably that's why you would have found the plurals and them. And then, of course, always in my school they used to teach me that God, or whenever you're referring to God, you should have a caps lock or something. There's nothing more to it other than that. So, but then apart, when I talk about God in plural, I mean, at that time, yes, I was a little into my understanding was a little more limited.
Right.
That I used to think that there were the deities. I used to confuse deities with God, and then I used to refer to God as gods. But now my understanding is much more clearer. I wouldn't say it's perfect, but at least it has evolved. I think it's better than what it was at that time.
Yeah, we all evolved. I mean, the basic point that I was trying to drive at is that it's good to have a back and forth going inside the head, because that way you hit the middle road. You're not skewed to either side. Yes. I think polarization in any form is bad, because you got to hit the middle road always.
Right.
So another thing which I
If
noticed
you
was
look at
that,
my the last chapter called the drawing board, I think I
yeah,
mentioned that the only ideology that you must have is to be liberated from all ideologies.
yes, yes, yes. I was coming to that actually. I also wanted to touch upon the crimson rays. So it was interesting how you, got the counter argument from a person from another community. You kind of stressed that out. So
Yes, yes.
that probably would be the antithesis of the theory in itself. So that was very interesting. Yeah, like I am into your book, I Duryodhana.
Yes.
I haven't been able to read it fully, unfortunately, and I didn't want
Yeah.
to wait for this to happen before I finished reading it. So I wanted to touch base with you, speak with you, get more insights into your thinking, and then read the book. And I selfishly, for a selfish reason, because then probably I would be able to understand the book better. Yeah. So are we still connected, Pradeep?
Yeah, yeah, of course I can hear you. Yeah.
So you've got pretty good reviews for that book, I Duryodhana. You have 4.5 on Amazon and nearly 4 on Goodreads. And I read some of your the reviews. If you, if
Yes.
you if you give me a minute, I'll just grab one of them.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So one of them was very interesting. So it says, what I really liked about the book was the original plot was not tampered for the sake of making a point, which is very easy to do in such a story. And this is what makes the book a really good book to read, because Pradeep has refrained from trying to justify the actions of a character that does not generate much sympathy.
Yeah.
Yeah, Duryodhana is
Yeah.
always looked upon as a villain.
Yeah, that's right. See, like again, just extending from my thought process of my previous book, where I thought that never be judgmental. I mean, the folly and
Right,
conclusiveness of being judgmental.
right.
So going by that, one thing I noticed, the generally, you'll notice that history tend to favor the victors.
Yeah,
The history belongs to the victors.
yeah.
So when there are two ways of looking at the Mahabharata. One is that if you look at it as a historical commentary,
Hmm.
a slightly fantasized historical commentary,
Hmm.
or you could look at it as a work of fiction by Vyasa.
Right,
Now, if you're looking at it as a work of fiction, then yes, I have no right to meddle with it.
right,
But then, if you because it's somebody's creative work. But if you're
right.
looking at it as it's a fantasized work of historical commentary, then you'll
Hmm.
notice that there are a lot of places where you'll raise questions.
Hmm.
Isn't the narrator? I mean, Vyasa himself, isn't he favoring the Pandavas or whatever just because they have won the war?
Hmm.
Lot of places you'll find situations where questions can be raised in favor of Duryodhana. I mean, you take his birth
Hmm.
when he was born,
Hmm.
and they found some mysterious omens. He brayed like a donkey, and there was some untimely rainfall and things like that.
Hmm.
And Vidura, who's supposedly the wisest man in the court of Hastinapur,
Hmm.
says these are bad omens. You must butcher the child. You must kill the child, the
Hmm.
baby, infant.
Hmm. Hmm.
And today Vidura is the wise Vidura. I mean, he's the wisdom of the world lies between his ears. I mean, he's famed across the world. And there's a guy who said you got to kill this child the day he
Hmm.
was born.
Hmm.
And now, for me, that didn't make any sense. It just didn't make any sense. Somebody who can say like that, I mean, I wouldn't say that he's not a wise man. I would say he's a lunatic. The guy
Hmm.
has to be a lunatic to make a suggestion like that.
Hmm.
So, I mean, these kind of various situations, you'll find that actually Duryodhana was wronged. And I really didn't need to tamper with the story, because if you narrate the story as it is,
Hmm.
and you just need to highlight certain issues to a discerning audience,
Right,
that's all.
right,
And they'll
right.
find out. They'll say, like, for example, many a times, it is mentioned that the Pandavas they tried to burn them down
Hmm.
in the house of wax.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
But if you look at the story, actually, the Pandavas burned the house of wax themselves. They stayed in that place
Hmm.
in Varanavat for 1 year.
Hmm.
At the end of, and during that time, they built a tunnel and
Hmm.
they burned down the house all
Hmm.
by themselves, and they
Hmm.
escaped through the tunnel. Now,
Right.
till that is okay. And what did they do? There were 5 innocent men and an old lady who were
Ah,
burnt in that house.
good
Now,
Lord.
Vyasa says it was sheer accident that they were burnt, and they were mistaken to be the Pandavas and their mother Kunti. It was by
Right.
sheer accident.
Right.
it doesn't look like an accident to me. It looked very contrived. Like they've put them there and then let these guys mistake them as us. And, it looks very evident. It's so evident. Many such places. And then when you say that Krishna, he is supposed to have advised Arjuna
Right.
that, look, even if it's your uncle, your father, whoever, if he's standing on the side of injustice, you got to
Right.
fight him.
Right.
Then why did Krishna give his army to Duryodhana?
Right. Yeah.
He told Arjuna, I will fight without arms on one side, my army I'll give to the other side. And the army, he should have told Duryodhana, sorry, pal, you're on the wrong side, you'll get no help from me.
Mm.
He didn't do that.
Mm.
So a lot of areas where I really don't need to twist the story. It's very evident that the story has been conveniently, what do you call, narrated to favor the victors at the end of the day. And this whole thing about these 5 people marrying Draupadi, it was very evident. The mother didn't want them to quarrel over a woman. So she said, share her. But then the Vyasa will come up with some story in the last birth and the birth before that. And so she's destined to marry.
To justify this whole thing.
Absolutely. So when you read it with an open mind,
Right.
and don't read it with a right-wing attitude, just read it with an open mind, you'll find a lot of nonsense and you'll really feel sad for this character, Duryodhana.
Okay.
You'd feel that he was wronged in many areas.
Do you think that the other character was wronged badly was Karna?
No, Karna, forgive me for sounding very strong, Karna was a bastard by birth.
Right.
But he proved that he was a bastard by deed also. And then I'll tell you why. Generally, everybody rates him as a big hero and Danveer, he was generous and all. But his generosity was to give himself a kind of self-importance.
Okay.
All his generous deeds were basically to say. And the other thing is, when he is fighting for Duryodhana, he's the commander of Duryodhana's army. He had no right to give a promise to his mother that I will kill only Arjuna, I will spare the other 4. He had absolutely no right to do that. I mean, the enemy is there, and that's the enemy. You got to kill the enemy. You're supposed to kill for your friend Duryodhana. You're fighting for him.
That's right.
And Duryodhana was kept in the dark about this. So there was a situation where he literally caught Yudhishthira by the edge of this bow. He pulled him in, and instead of taking him as a captive, he told Yudhishthira, "Go. You're not good enough to fight with me." He spared his life. Had he just taken him, the war would have been over. So this guy was actually cheating Duryodhana at every given point of time. But today he is hailed as an epitome of friendship. That's bullshit. Absolute BS. There's a lot of things you need to, you really don't need to fabricate it. Just scratch through the story, you'll find that the actual truth is something else.
Right. So,
but again, he's been spoken of gloriously because finally it was proved that he was the son of Kunti, and hence brother of the Pandavas who have won the war finally. So it's a glorification of the character. But to me, he was a worst character in my opinion, the whole epic.
Right. So it is the understanding that it's skewed, and you can't really blame the author, Vyasa, for portraying one side as a good or bad. I think we are the ones who kind of interpret it the way that we wanted to.
A lot of times, Vyasa's description of it, see, the original script, what Vyasa narrated and Ganesh wrote is nowhere around to be verified.
Right.
But when you read some of the more authentic, so to speak, authentic versions, there are times where Vyasa is given a lot of undue credit for the Pandavas and a lot of flack for the Kauravas. There are situations where I find that he's been a little not very neutral.
Right. Now the reason why I asked you that was you did say that you don't have to do anything. You just have to shine the light at on particular areas, and then the truth will leap out of you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So were you interested in these the Puranas even at a young age? Because even in Capillary you have one story there, right? The Crimson
the Crimson Race. Yeah.
So right from as a kid you were interested in.
Yeah, I had the entire probably the best collection of Amar Chitrakatha in school, and so I was deeply interested in Indian mythology. It all happened during one of those vacations in my native place in Guruvayur. Of course, I come from the temple town of Guruvayur, so to that extent there'll be some exposure to all those stories. But there was this vacation time when all our relatives and cousins, we all get together, and so that time there was a water shortage in Madras, Chennai. So our school, the holidays got extended by a month or maybe a couple of months. So that was the time when all my cousins of the same age had left, and I was alone. I was only boy, a young kid around, and with my grandmother. And I could spend a lot of time with my grandmother. She used to take me to the temple and all that. So during that time, that's when she started telling me a lot of stories, and she had a very nice way of narrating all these stories. And some of my interest started there, and then of course all the Amar Chitrakatha books, and then of course Rajgopalchari's Mahabharat, and there was Kamala Subramaniam's Mahabharat, and of course I was hooked on to the show on Amrita TV called Bharat Darshana. It was by the late Professor Tirur Vishwambaran. He died a couple of years back. That went on for more than 10 years and over 3,500 episodes or so. So I can say that I've seen almost all the episodes, save one or two, but I've seen. And that was, again, it had a lot of in-depth analysis on the Mahabharat and the ancient scriptures. So I was very fascinated by all this.
I'm not sure if I got this name right, but was it Peter Brooks who made one with Mridlani Saraf?
Yes.
Did you get to see that? What did you think of that?
Yeah, I saw it when I was a kid. I mean, I just saw the video, but it was kind of silly.
The westernized.
Yeah.
Classic.
Though I like the ending. I really like the ending of that, where finally after all the narration, Vyasa finished narrating everything, and Ganesha is writing all this.
Yeah.
And finally, Ganesh takes the head.
Yeah.
He removes the elephant's head, and it's Krishna there. That was a nice twist. I mean, it was a nice way to end it. So that was nice. I remember that time. That had an impact.
Right. So I actually one of my trips, or I don't know where exactly I saw him, but this guy was a professor in a film school in Pennsylvania, and he told me that the entire Indian movie industry is based on just two stories, Ramayana and Mahabharata. Any sense in that? Stretching the truth a bit?
You really can't. I mean, it's kind of a very passionate statement. And it kind of glorifies it. I mean, like you got to scratch into it and you'll find that that's not true.
You think so?
I mean, like there are a lot of areas which, in today's circumstances, a lot of which I don't think even these epics can kind of explain or not covered in these epics. But okay, it's a nice way to put it across about the importance of the epics. I mean, I have nothing to add.
So have you seen any character that doesn't resemble one of the characters in either of these two books? Are you able to kind of drill down any person you see in real life? Are you able to associate with any of these characters? Because you have a insight into the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, and also you come across so many people in your professional life. So have you been able to relate? Because there are some books of management also which arise from the Mahabharata.
You're talking about characters in Bollywood or general characters in life? I mean, what
general characters in life.
Yeah, there are people who don't fit anywhere. You've not read them in Mahabharata or in Shakespeare, or you find them always. I mean, a lot of people have found me to be one such guy, and my mom feels that way about me. She doesn't know where to slot me. Some maverick from which planet kind of thing. So there are guys like that.
Right. So how much of a fan are you of Devdutt Patnaik?
I haven't read a single book of his, very honestly. But I've watched a few of his talks on YouTube. Yeah, he makes sense. Some of what he talks really makes sense. But I haven't read.
Okay. Yeah, neither have I. I've seen more of those YouTube videos. So he's given a explanation for mythology. He says it's a myth. So myth.
I like that explanation. It's a kind of somewhere where myth and reality comes in.
Yeah.
I like what he said. Yeah, it made a lot of sense.
Right. So how's the writing going? Are you anything in the works?
Not really. There's been some kind of a writer's block, so to speak. I'm just waiting. Like I said, I'm not a method writer, or I'm not one of those professional writers. I mean, I need something to trigger me, some idea, some thought to trigger me, and then I need that takeaway to give a reader. So once I get that, then I can start writing on the particular thing. Occasionally I have given some articles for Times of Oman, the company I work for.
Right. Did you kind of feel fatigued after writing the I Duryodhana, because it's 344 pages, man?
No, not fatigued. There was a feeling of achievement, but the real fatigue was, by the time I got it published. I mean, that was really fatiguing. The whole process. That was getting a literary agent, then the proofreading, the editing, and all those things, and haranguing these guys, the design cover, so many things. Those things
Right.
were pretty fatiguing. The contract, signing of the contract.
Right.
And especially it was more difficult for me because I'm located in Oman and the publishers in Noida. So
Right.
that was fatiguing. Writing was more of a joyful process. I enjoyed the writing. Yes, once I finished and the last line, this full stop, and yes, there was some kind of a feeling of euphoria.
Mm. So there was another author that I actually presented in my podcast. She's a doctor, and she was saying how difficult it was to her to edit the book that she wrote, because she had to read the same thing over and over and over again. And by the end of it, she was completely exhausted in terms of having to read the same thing that she'd written. And she said she also ran the risk of trying to amend what she's been writing, because sometimes she thinks, when she reads it, she thinks, oh, this could have been presented this way, and it became a never-ending process.
Yeah.
Did you face any such thing?
No, I knew that, and I have this habit of swallowing words when I type.
Because
even today, I can't write one simple full sentence without missing one or two words in the middle.
Because you probably think faster than you write.
Yeah, probably that's the reason. So that way I knew. So that headache was there. So I knew I had to proofread it thoroughly, but that was not the end of it. Then there was a proofreading session, with the publisher.
Right.
And there were certain things, we had a very healthy interaction. There were certain things which she had to point out to me.
Mm-hmm.
That, look, it may not be right to use this word or that word, or like there was a particular place where I wrote stadium.
Okay.
And she said, no, use arena instead, because stadium makes it a little more, skewed towards a Roman kind of whatever logic she had.
Right.
So, few places here and there, but I felt that yes, they were professionals, so they know what they're talking. So there were some changes like that, a few places which I thought was valid, very valid.
Yeah. Come to think of it, stadium is more contemporary, right? Arena is.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, how important is it to have a? Tell me the whole process, Pradeep, because you're. I'm thinking you're 2 books old, but considering the volume, it's pretty awesome. A lot of work has gone into it. So, how does the creative process you explained? So then, if supposing somebody wants to embark on a writing career, or wants to put out his or her novel, or a kind of book that you've written, what is the process? One is, of course, the creative process, which is very subjective. Now, after that, what happens? Now, in your case, you talked about a literary agent. Is that something that's absolutely necessary?
In today's situation in India, yes, a literary agent will be helpful, because my experience in the first book, The Capillary Effect, which finally I ended up self-publishing on Kindle on Amazon. Like like you don't get responses. I mean, it's unbelievable. Some publishers, they borderline people don't pick. There are nobody responds on the borderline. I mean, that's how pathetic. You don't get response, and generally, you got to be some well-known name or well-referred to bring it out.
Right.
So as a newcomer, you will find it difficult. But a literary agent, at least a guy with whom I got hooked up with, he was good, and they're one of the top literary agents right now in India, the bookmakers. But at that time, they were just also probably starting off with that. It was around 3 years back.
Right.
But of course, they got their own processes we need to follow. We need to, send so many copies of the book, and then also we need to see how we need to showcase how we can also help in the promotion. It's not like the publisher is going to take up the entire promotion work. They see how well we are connected and what we can contribute, and then they also have these publishers for different genres. Okay, this is a genre, then this is the right publisher to go, and these kind of things. But they have a lot more profit. They have better access to the publishers. Publishers also trust their recommendations. So that's why.
Okay, so it's not like they like if you want to one fine day is okay, I'm going to write a book, and then you fix a literary agent. And he says, okay, write it on this topic, and that's not how it works.
I don't know. probably it works at some levels. Probably if you're a well-known author and people are waiting
Okay.
for your second book, and then probably there might be a suggestion. It could work that way, but that doesn't work with me. I mean, for me, it's like absolutely. I may not write another book for the rest of my life if I don't get an idea. So that's the way it works with me. I mean, I can't write just because somebody wants me to write. If somebody
Right.
gives me an advance and says, "Yeah, this is for your next book," I will say,
Yeah.
"No, keep
Yeah.
it because I'm not sure if I'll write one. So when I write one, I'll call you back."
Right. So again, going back to what this person told me, the other author who told me, she said that she had to spend a lot of her own money to be able to get this whole thing going. So
Mercifully, that way, I didn't have to shell out anything. As
oh,
a matter
that
of fact, I got a fairly generous amount by the industry standard as an advance against royalty.
wow.
So that worked. So that's why the agent helped me in that. I mean, that it was good that, and he was able to get me some multiple offers, and so that gave him negotiation, the leverage to negotiate.
Wow.
So and we got I hooked up with one of the leading publishers in India called Home Book International, and
Right.
they have their own chain of retail bookstores as well. So
Right.
and they were good. I mean, they've brought out similar books in this similar genre.
Okay. Has your literary agent tried to pitch it to Bollywood, Hollywood?
No, as a matter of
It'd
fact,
make a great movie, actually, if you ask me.
yeah. But the only thing, with the current, it
What?
depends on what the reaction would be from the right wingers.
Oh, you mean that way? Okay, the political. Well, you could have, there are two sides to a coin. So you could have one side that detests it completely, and the other side that really loves it. And knowing you, I think you prefer a situation like that.
Yeah, let's see where it goes. Actually, there is a publisher's interested in this whole thing. He's tied up with another agency which takes care of film rights for this kind of content.
Okay,
So he's tied up with somebody, and let's see if something works great.
hope to see a movie. Okay, so you were called the Elvis Presley of Chennai.
Well, some shadows never leave you.
Yeah, I've seen some of your YouTube videos, and you did a pretty darn good job of it, man.
Yeah,
So some of the songs that I
yeah. I've
prefer,
been, I've been, I've been guilty of that. So
yeah. So I think you also wrote a song for one of those movies where Kamalahaasan was involved, wasn't it?
yeah. There's this movie called Nala Damayanti, which was a home production of Mr. Kamalahaasan.
Uh-huh.
And so I got a call from his office, and when I went there, I met the music director and the director of the movie. And
Uh-huh.
they said that this is a situation,
Uh,
and there's this guy who's a cook,
uh,
and he's stranded in Australia.
uh,
I mean, and then some unfortunate occurrences, and finally he finds himself on the street,
right, right,
with nowhere to go, and
right,
so we want a situation where he's on the street and stuff like that.
right.
So I wrote this song called Stranded. They gave me the tune. He just played a tune on a piano and gave me
Okay.
a cassette.
Uh-huh.
So I just went home and wrote the lyrics and gave to them. Then it was initially to be sung on just the beginning in English. They
Mhm.
wanted to record the whole song. There's this guy called Dave Pascal. I don't know if you heard of him.
Yeah.
So he sang the tracks,
Uh-huh.
and the idea was to start the song in the movie. Just start the song with a few lines in English, and then the rest in Tamil.
Right.
Then Mr. Kamalahaasan, he went through the lyrics and he
Mhm.
went through the tracks, and then he said he wants to do the song himself.
Oh, okay.
And then it didn't stop there. They went and shot a music video as well with him and
Wow.
Madhavan acting. Him and Madhavan were acting in it
Uh-huh.
on the music video. So that is also you might find that on YouTube, the music
Okay.
video,
Okay.
scripts, and
So did you get the credits for that or no?
yeah. Of course, in the movie, my name is written along with lyricist
Uh-huh.
Wali, and followed by Pradeep Govind.
That's awesome, man. Awesome. I mean, being on the same level as Wali.
It was funny, but
Uh, so you are basically an engineer, right?
yeah,
Mechanical engineer.
mechanical engineer. Yeah,
Yeah. Way back
been
in
guilty of that as well. Yeah.
1990. I have this pet theory that engineers should actually be working with their hands, but instead you went and did your MBA. So,
No, my
you-
engineering was basically like very honestly, I wanted to actually, I always dreamt big. So I wanted to be a cricketer.
Ah,
Started off like that.
okay.
Uh, and my dad was in the foundry business. He was an aspiring doctor who ended up in the foundry business.
Okay.
Yeah, he studied BA economics.
Uh-huh.
He couldn't get medicine seat for medicine, so studied BA economics,
Uh-huh.
and somehow ended up as one of the top foundrymen in the country. You can, so to speak. He was
Wow.
very one of the people used to go to him for consulting and stuff like that.
Right.
So he thought that okay, he was a little unsure what this guy is going to, what I'm going to turn, because he was clueless
Uh-huh.
what my ambitions were and stuff. And I was also pretty clueless. All I knew is that I'd love to play cricket a lot.
Right.
Of course, I used to listen to a lot of Elvis those days in plus two.
Right.
But cricket was something I found. Then so somehow he put me in this college, engineering college. I got into it. I passed out also. But
Uh,
immediately after college, I suffered a shoulder dislocation.
oh,
Yeah, and that put a full stop to my cricketing aspirations.
you
I
had
was basically a bowler. Huh? I was
you had
basically a
an
bowler, and
injury when you were playing. You had the problem.
no, it was ridiculous. I mean, the reason I was trying to start a TVS 50, putting it on
Ah.
the stand. So I started it and I removed it from the stand, and the thing just took my shoulder off. The thing. So and that kind of gave me some kind of a career path. Okay, it took me from the wrong path. Okay, that's not the chosen field for you. And then somehow this music and stuff like that. And during my final year in college, I had started songwriting.
Mm.
I used to sing for the college and
Do you want me?
songwriting.
Okay. Do you
Huh?
want me to? Do you want me to edit this and say that you have, instead of a TVS 50, do you want to insert a bullet into it to make the story?
No, it's okay. Because anyway, so
Okay. And then
yeah,
sorry.
that was the Enfield. Huh?
Yeah.
So so I started songwriting during the college days, and
Okay.
then I was interested in bringing out this music album, but
Right.
in English.
Right.
And those days, probably Remo Fernandez was the only guy who had brought out an English album across
Yeah.
India.
Yeah.
There was nobody else who had brought out an English album.
Correct. Correct.
So I had made this demo and I'd walked around, to various recording companies.
Uh-huh.
And there was this particular, and then I went to the A&R manager of HMV, the Gramophone Company of India.
Sorry to interrupt you, Pradeep. Which year was this?
Yeah, this was in 90.
So what
1990.
kind of equipment did you have to record your demo?
No, I'd gone to a proper studio, and
you
I had a few friends who, yeah.
Okay. So you put in
I
money.
mean, those days it cost me around $6,000.
Wow.
Yeah. So we did that, and then this guy listened to this music, this A&R manager, and then he said, no, nobody will take. Why should they take? And then he said a particular this thing which kind of triggered me. He
Mhm.
said, look, when Michael Jackson is there, why should somebody take Pradeep?
Ah.
And I mean, that kind of okay, but I'll show you what. So I joined the company later. Later in the year, I joined the company a year
Right.
later.
Was that guy still?
I mean, that was again a long process. Huh?
Was that guy still around? The one who told you?
Yeah, he was very much around. As a matter of fact, when my album released, he was one of the most active guys, pushing it, and he organized a press meet and all that.
Sweet.
So, and now he's a very good friend of mine. No, let's just take, I mean, one of our good friends later on.
Okay.
So, but that statement kind of, triggered the thing. So finally, when I joined HMV, I started working in the sales department. They had started this division called the International Music Division.
Right.
Actually, that division was floundering. They had the licensee to market all the products of EMI London. So
Okay.
that included Beatles, Pink Floyd, the works, Jethro Tull, and all these. So that particular the sales of those cassettes were actually dropping, during that time.
Okay.
And there were various reasons, multiple reasons for that. So they wanted some focus. So they formed this international music division in all the four areas: north, south, east, and west. So I was heading that division in south.
Okay.
So I started working the market, and then all the dealers became my good friends and all stuff. So while working the market, I used to also talk to them about, play my demo to these guys. What do you think? How many cassettes will you take if we bring this out? I never told them it was me, And then, yeah, it's nice. We'll take so many. And so, okay, now it's me. How much will you take? So then they're trapped. So finally I called. I mean, we had this meeting with the vice president and all that. And I told him I got a product which I can sell you as X number of copies if you bring it out. And I'm the artist, and this. And I mean, they were literally arm twisted them into releasing my album. They produced the album. They also produced a music video,
Uh-huh.
which was again directed by me.
Huh.
It was called "It Could Have Been Me." That was played on MTV and Channel V and some other channels.
Wow. Okay. Do you still get royalty?
No, I mean there's nothing much. I got that. There was some token royalty before the stocks returned from the market. I managed to wriggle it out.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But the thing is, it is sad because those days, I mean, there was no market. I mean, people are shy of spending money, and there was this mindset again. Even the established foreign artists,
Hmm.
apart from maybe one or two like Michael Jackson or the big name MC Hammer, big names. All
Hmm.
the others, the number of copies they sold were very limited. If you compare that to the Hindi film music,
Right.
it sold in millions, and these sold in
Right.
hundreds. You know,
Right.
getting 1,000 copies to be sold across India, it's a big deal.
Right.
Unless,
Right.
of course, it's a Michael Jackson.
Right.
So, but the kind of money you invest and then the returns and all that stuff, to be fair enough, it really didn't set the charts on fire.
Right.
But I can go down and say that I was probably the second Indian artist to release an English album in India. So probably for the record, I could use that.
Yeah. You don't have anything framed or anything.
Nah.
Okay. So this when I think Beatles and Michael Jackson was much after all that. So how did the market take the first cassette of Michael Jackson? Did you have problems selling it?
The first cassette of Michael Jackson, no, Michael Jackson's first was in '84. That was Thriller.
Thriller, yeah.
Then '87 was Bad.
Mm-hmm.
Then when I joined HMV, that's when Michael Jackson was launched by CBS.
Okay.
The third album, Dangerous was launched by CBS.
Right. That's when it hit the market, or no?
Yeah, around that time, 90s,
Okay.
early 90s. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
It just didn't hit the market. It hit the market like a tsunami, actually.
Okay.
It just took over the market. It was competing with Hindi film music. That's the kind of demand it had. Amazing.
Right. How did you combat piracy? Because I remember, I'm guilty of it too. There was this, I won't name the store, but there was this place on Mount Road that would make copies for you and give it to you for 10 rupees, I think. Or if you paid 15 rupees, they would give you a chromium cassette.
Yeah.
So how did you prevent this? Were you also in charge of that? Because I don't think copyright laws and enforcement and all that was prevalent.
Actually, quite frankly, the anti-piracy activity was not really strong. I mean, we didn't go very strong on that. We could have done much better. But at the end of the day, we got ourselves to blame. Like, for example, when this Pretty Woman movie was released, there was a huge demand for the soundtrack.
Okay.
But we did not supply it on time.
Okay.
The company did not supply. I mean, there was no original cassettes available in the market.
Right.
So these guys used to record or create duplicate and sell. So to some extent, we have ourselves to blame for this kind of not filling up these gaps. But other than that, yes, a lot of people used to, and we also, and for us, most of these guys who indulge in pirated cassettes recording, they were our regular good clients as well.
Okay. So they would have.
we didn't want to, we used to shy away from. As I mean, sometimes we occasionally get something recorded from them as well. So we were good friends. So we could have done much better, but our system wasn't strong enough. So there was later on, okay, we did have some. I forgot the name. There was a South Indian music company, Simca it used to be called, South Indian Music Companies Association or something.
Okay.
And they had formed an anti-piracy cell where Julius Ribeiro, who was police, he was heading the thing for some time.
Right.
But again, it didn't make sufficient inroads. There was nothing much happening.
Okay. Yeah. What is your opinion about? You don't have to answer this if you're not comfortable, but Ilayaraja's claim that music is his, and what exactly is going on? Because once you have, as far as I know, if you have been hired to write music for something, then it's no longer your property.
No, in Ilayaraja's case, or for that matter, earlier, Jeshudas also, there was a similar.
Yes.
See, what here is, it's a technicality. I don't think Ilayaraja really needs that money or whatever. He was just trying to put a system in place, because if you see all these cassettes or CDs, it says unauthorized public performance prohibited, whatever.
Right.
It's a standard statutory thing that goes on all the cassettes and CDs.
Okay.
Now, what Ilayaraja at that time, it was not just his company owned the music, most of the music that he produced, he made. Echo
Oh.
recording, if you remember.
Oh, yeah. Echo.
Like Yeshudas had Tarangani,
Right.
and Ilayaraja had Echo.
Oh, that was convenient, right?
So yeah, so most of this music actually belonged to him. I mean, there were other companies like HMV which had the earlier old music of Ilayaraja, but most of the music that he made in the 80s, he was the owner, proprietor himself.
So
I
he
mean,
bought the rights of it. He bought
yeah,
the
it was
rights.
a part of the negotiation or whatever.
Okay.
So in that kind of a situation, when he's saying that I think, I'm not sure, I don't know full detail, but I think all he was saying was just put a system in place. I'm not asking for money, but just take an official permission. So it's like this. When I'm doing this interview for you, you had sent me a small form to submit, right?
Right.
It's just a formality. So just you're putting a system in place.
Correct.
So that, it's not an unauthorized performance there.
Right.
So I think he was just trying to implement that, but then probably got blown out of proportion or whatever.
Right.
Because I really don't think Ilayaraja needs the kind of whatever royalty that that you get out of performing one of the songs on the stage. I mean, that's ridiculous. I mean, it's even ridiculous to even think on those lines. But I think he was trying to bring in a system.
Right.
So I really don't blame him. But it got perceived in various other ways. That's about it.
Right. But with your experience with in Sony and the Gramophone Company of India and others, how far is these? Let me ask you this way: Western artists, do they have very clear? I think the situation is much easier or better implemented in the Western Hemisphere. Correct? It wasn't clear in India, or was it just that Indian artists didn't take this seriously?
Yeah, for us, this whole concept. See, one thing is that it used to be only HME those days.
Right.
And of course, when it's a monopoly, there's some kind of sense of complacency that sets in.
Right.
And I don't know, there is these loopholes like Article 52 or something, which Gulshan had also, leveraged to bring out those T-series cassettes,
cover versions.
Yeah, cover versions and stuff like that.
Right.
But yeah, we are not as organized as now. Of course, the entire music industry has gone to a different. The platforms are different. The media is different nowadays. But those days, we could have been a lot more organized.
Right.
But then again, we are talking about the population, the kind of diverse mix of music.
Right.
And even you take the distribution.
Right.
Interiors, you go right. I mean, if you're talking about music stores in, let's say, London or Europe, whatever, you have those HMV stores.
Right, correct.
You have this chain of stores and Virgin stores or whatever, you find the music there.
Right.
But in India, that's not enough. You need to go to the interiors. And if you go to sell music, you need to make your stock available right in the interiors. You need to go to the villages there, the cow belt.
Right.
And the whole dynamics, the distribution dynamics, everything is totally different.
Right.
So to get it as organized as it is in the West, it's got its own logistical difficulties in India.
Right. So, what you do now, you're the regional business head of Muscat Media Group. So,
that's right.
Right. So this essentially, you kind of oversee the production, oversee the...
No, not production. Basically the marketing. We are in the marketing. So we are a multimedia group. Basically, we are better known here as the Times of Holland. It's a flagship brand, the newspaper.
Okay.
Now, of course, with all this COVID and all that, we have stopped printing the newspaper for the time being.
Okay.
But we have a lot of platforms, digital platforms, and so many things. And basically, business development, marketing space.
Okay.
And that apart, I was also the project director we had a literary contest, which was one of the successful projects that I initiated here.
Mm-hmm.
And we're trying to do the next edition of it. Just once all the sponsorship and everything falls through, we should be doing that.
Yeah, I can see that you are the committee head for that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Now let me go back to your creative thing. How much of a thick skin do you need to be a creative person? Or let me ask you this way: how much of feedback or how much of positive feedback do you need to keep your art going? Do you need a lot of feedback? Is your art output dependent on the feedback that you get?
Again, it has to be from the right people. I mean, I'm not going to lose sleep over feedback I get from somebody. I mean, Like, for example, yeah, a feedback from somebody like you would mean a lot.
Right.
Because I've written it with a particular, I mean, there's a particular piece. I mean, this I Duryodhana, the book.
Hmm.
To be very honest, there's nobody in my family who's read it.
Okay.
My wife, my daughter, my mother, my dad passed away last year, but he hasn't read it. My
Right.
sister, nobody's read it because they don't have a clue about
Okay.
the Mahabharat. And I said I have no complaints because you need to be a little aware of the epic. Otherwise, it's a pointless exercise reading the book.
Right.
So I would look forward to feedback from people who know the epic,
Okay.
so to speak. Likewise, the earlier book, Capillary Effect, also. I mean, some people who would try to understand what I'm trying to convey.
Hmm.
I know there's a particular audience frequency which I look at. Feedback from them really matters. But if
Yeah.
it's going to be just somebody who reads it and says, I found some grammar here wrong, there would have been, like I would say, like for example, there was a story called the solitary star in my book.
Right. That I was coming to that. Why is the sky blue? Because the grass is green.
That's the one. So there is this area where there's this portion where the child, my daughter says, "You're the bestest daddy in the whole world."
Yeah. Yeah.
And there is this guy who read it and told me there's a grammatical error. Bestest, there's no word called bestest. I said, thank you so much. I mean, it's too late to edit. What are you really going to tell this guy? It's like somebody coming and telling Ramayana is stupid. How can a monkey fly over the ocean?
Yeah.
What do you tell this guy? Okay, thanks for the feedback.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that's about it.
You
So
should
it really,
you should have told them what you told your colleague told you in that voicemail of the capillary effect. If
yeah.
if an elephant can sit on a mouse.
Yeah. Why can't I drink a little milk? I mean, that's a.
Yeah. What again? Going back to Duryodhana, there was another review that I have here in front of me. A well-written book that articulately describes the power struggle of Hastinapur cousins, the fratricidal war. However, I was disappointed by the crass description of Lord Krishna.
Yeah.
As I continued reading, it struck me that Duryodhana had never revered Lord Krishna. Yeah, Duryodhana had no. Did he ever revere Lord Krishna?
He did not revere, but then he really had no enmity towards Krishna in the sense that one is he had a lot of reverence for Krishna's elder brother, Balram.
Okay.
Because Balram was a guy who taught him the art of fighting with the mace. You know? So he had a lot of reverence for him. And Krishna also, he had a lot of respect because Duryodhana's daughter is married to Krishna's son. So they're related that way.
Okay.
So they have a relationship that way. But he did not have reverence, so to speak. But he did try to, he did open his arm for friendship. But Krishna used to spurn it.
Okay.
Because Krishna was more attached to Arjuna and the Pandavas, which he felt was a little, and then in the book you'll find that many times he opens his arms of friendship to Krishna, but Krishna kind of rejects it.
It was just solely for the sake of dharma Krishna sided with Arjuna, or whether undercurrents to this whole thing?
No, it really depends on how you want to look at that epic.
Okay.
That's what Vyasa will tell you it was for the sake of dharma because he is favoring the people who have won the war.
Right.
They are the ruling now. So his next, food depends on their grace.
Right.
So he has to say anything in favoring them. You look at it that way,
Right.
So you can say Krishna favored dharma, but then who decides what is dharma here? Like I said, when a child is born and the very first day you want him butchered, is it dharma?
Definitely.
And you talk about dharma. Duryodhana's father was denied the lordship of Hastinapur because he was blind. But Duryodhana is not blind.
Yep. Yeah.
And it's the king's son who normally ascends the throne.
Correct.
Dharma again, it's all layered,
Right.
Whichever side has won, dharma is on their side.
Right.
Automatically, if probably Hitler had won the World War,
Yeah.
the whole world will be praising him as the Messiah who helped the world, purge the world of the Jewish menace.
Right, and we will be speaking.
Today the narrative would have been totally different.
True.
Hitler and Alexander are guilty of the same crimes, invasion, but it's Alexander the Great and Hitler the dictator.
Right.
The thing is, so that's why originally this Mahabharat was called Jaya, victory, whatever.
Oh, okay.
The original name of the epic was Jaya.
Wow.
victory. I mean, that's how Vyasa viewed it. Then probably he thought that, okay, his this thing would get exposed. Okay, we are favoring the guys who won, so probably changed it, whatever.
You drilled down pretty deep, man, into this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so like someone recently was asked, how will history judge you? And the reply was, uh, it, the history belongs to the victors.
Yes,
The one, like you
yes,
said, it's the ones
yes,
who
yes,
won the war is the one
yes,
who get a chance to write history.
absolutely.
Anyway, Pradeep, it's been awesome speaking with you.
Now, same here, Nanda. It's been great catching up.
Yeah, and it's nice to have a peep inside your insight and how it works. And I'm looking forward to the other book before I
Sure,
hopefully
sure,
it'll come out before I finish this one.
sure.
But anyway, all the very best to you.
And put in a nice review on Amazon, even if you don't like it.
I certainly will. I certainly will. Okay,
Right
Pradeep.
then.
Okay,
Okay.
bye.